friends, welcome to another exciting episode with your friends.
Okay. Real. I'm just gonna like this one as well, Jens.
I'm responsible for the video. Stress.
Hello friends!
Hey
guys! Welcome back to another exciting episode of Friend Chat City! Today we have an exciting topic. It is called...
Boundaries. Sharon? Boundaries.
Setting her own boundaries in her sleep there.
What a mess.
Okay, set the boundary and the laughing. Let's actually start. So today's video is titled 3 sets of key boundaries that you should have in every relationship. That is what we want to talk about. We'll dig deep into our own relationships and the ways that we're thinking about boundaries. So if you want to be with us and not set the boundary here, stick around!
Boundaries.
So I think firstly, boundaries are where you cross the line, where you say between you as a stranger, you as a family, you as a friend, that's where it stops, and me and myself, actually, that's the boundary. I'm not willing to go further than that. Key boundary that I mentioned earlier that I think is really important to set in every relationship is how people treat you. I think you decide whether or not you want to participate in a particular relationship and its nature. And you can be a part of it, and somebody can treat you in the way that they choose to, but you have the opportunity in it to say, I'm not willing to take that. I will not be a part of this. I will not let you treat me the way that you are. It's not good enough for me, or I don't like it that way because it evokes something else in me that is not the best version of what I want to become, right? So I think part of setting your boundaries because you have a particular value system or goal setting or something of what you are and what you want for your own life. And when you can see something is derailing you from the direction of your own life, then I think that is where you actually cross the boundary.
Do you think you knew before the person crossed the boundary that this particular thing for me is where I draw the line? Do you think boundaries are set as you go? Or do you think you're like, when it comes to this, if you say this, then this is where I draw the line?
Okay, so in most instances, I would not have been able to identify prior that I crossed a boundary here. But prior, I would have always known what my key values are, right? Like, so family is really important to me, right? Compassion and empathy is really important. And so when somebody does something that you can feel, this is contrary to this belief. This is absolutely unempathetic, right? Like the way that this person speaks about the situation has no soul in it, and I don't agree. So I think for me, my soul vehemently disagrees with the way that somebody does something, and I think when that feeling comes there, then I'm like, no, that's wrong. I think I'm not always very clear about what's right or wrong. I think I have quite a threshold for people. But I feel like when it cuts there, I'm like, that goes against my value of what I believe is important for other people. What do you guys think? What are important boundaries that you set in your relationships?
So I think I agree with you with that. I think for me, I really value respect. And I think I afford it to people as the first thing, you know? And maybe because I afford it to people, I assume that it is reciprocated. So when I feel that is not the case, then I actually feel that you're crossing a boundary. So it could either be what you say, it could be what you do, it could be a gesture that you make, it could be a story that you tell that you're trying to invite me into, and I feel that this is a little bit, you know? So I don't know, it's almost like sometimes things that are kind of like distasteful. For me, it'll either be maybe someone speaking really harshly about somebody else. Yes, that's not necessarily disrespecting me, but it lets me in on the kind of person that you might be, and that for me is a boundary of I wouldn't want to invite that into my own space. So almost like a boundary forms there, where I'm aware of like, I wouldn't want that for myself, right? But also, I think people who have spoken very harshly, either to me or in a way that I found was completely rude, I just draw that boundary. It just becomes clear to me that, wow, I actually don't need that in my life. Doesn't mean I haven't forgiven you. I forgive you, but I also understand that I cannot have that. I don't trust you. You're not safe. You're actually not for me. You know what I mean? And I think there's a difference between when you set a boundary. Doesn't mean that you are on the other side of the boundary angrily looking for people to like drop out. No, you're just actually saying, as for me and my house, I choose not to engage there or have you. I can't host you in my life as well. So many things I've said is my one boundary.
That boundary, therefore, I say.
And therefore, that's my boundary.
For me in my house, that's a boundary. Shaz Nader.
So for me, I was telling these guys earlier actually, one of the boundaries that came to mind is I really struggle with people almost naming you or like boxing you or like having an opinion about you that you don't agree with and standing their ground on it. It blows my mind. Yeah. It blows my mind. So I think reducing you is a part of it where you're so many things and you're layered and you can tell, and perhaps it's the respect thing again, because there's some instances where people are doing it and it's not from a malicious place, but there's times where people do it and it's to reduce you. So they want to make you this thing and almost present you as this thing, and that you can't be a lot more in different things in different situations. So something like, Sharon's the emotional one, and you're sitting in that circle shocked. You're also looking for that Sharon. And then you're like, no, but I'm not.
I'm Sharon who?
And then now you come across so defensive, you're like, I'm not. And then they're like, guys, we all know Sharon's emotional.
Sharon.
And Sharon's there like, I'm not.
And it shrinks you. The goal of that is to shrink you.
And I think that's my thing with it.
So,
and the weird thing is someone else could say that in a different setting, that Sharon's emotional, but it's almost different in that you're not trying to reduce me, but there's places where people use that to try and then draw lines, and that for me is a big boundary where I'm just like, don't define me,
it
don't
renders you
reduce
powerless
me.
in
Exactly.
Why do they want to do that?
You are incapable.
No, not you.
You cross the square. There's a boundary for you there.
Yeah, because it almost doesn't even allow you to engage outside that in that circle now. And I think it depends the time in which it's said. To say it's said where people are having logical discussions, and it's like, no, but we know Shaz makes emotional discussions.
Yeah.
So
no your time, Sharon.
Exactly.
You can no longer
Nothing is valid.
to that.
I struggle with that. That's a boundary. It's don't do it, or at least be watchful about the way.
That's actually such a dangerous thing, because somebody also like clips your wings, right? Like they take away your freedom to be anything that you want to be in that particular moment by defining it for not only for you but for everybody around. Nima's this hey.
She's gonna cry.
Don't cry, Shaz. Don't cry. It's actually really unfair. Do you think people do that as a projection? When people reduce you in a moment where other people are there as well, is that projecting?
I think it's someone standing on your head to get height.
Ooh,
you know.
Come on, Bessie.
Beautiful imagery. I literally saw that when you said.
You know, like, I honestly think it's like to give wind to their like comments or to like their points. They need to be like, Sharon, hold on, bruh. So it's almost like it silences you, it cuts you out of the group and the room, and then it's just fewer voices, and maybe theirs is the strongest, right? But if I can catch Sharon in this thing that she also knows, you might know that you are emotional. But that's not the point right now, right?
Exactly.
And maybe the time that I showed you I was emotional was in a different space, and maybe a safer space. I didn't know it would be ammunition later. Boundary. That's the boundary.
Stop right there.
Stop right there, actually. But I wonder, do you communicate? Do you guys feel like you're able to communicate your boundary? Are you able to communicate?
Because one of the things I was going to ask you guys on both your boundaries, and watch me evade that question.
Yeah.
One of the things I was going to ask you, so how do you deal with these boundaries where that person is either a family member or a friend? So it's not someone that you can almost discard out of your life, but it's someone who's in your life, and maybe just continues to say it's your family or it's a close friend, and it's like
and you want to retaliate. First of all, if we come into you want to almost like be like,
so how do you navigate that? Is it a matter of telling them, dude, no, that's a boundary for me, it's not okay? But it's family wilds out, they can continue even though
I think with friends, I think it needs a level of self-awareness on your side to understand what it is they're doing, right? Understand what it's doing in that power dynamic in those relationships. And I think when you have understood it, and actually you've pinpointed that there's maybe a pattern in this, then I do think it's important to communicate, because you are now grasping something from it that maybe they're not even aware that they're doing. But you can see, man, that comes from your own insecurity. And you want to almost pull me down or feed into an insecurity of mine, and it's not good, right? Like it's not, there's no reason for you to do that. I also think it's important to set boundaries on your time. I think your time is yours first before it's anybody else's, right? And I think you understand what needs to be done with your time, right? Like, and I think at the end of the day, if you don't use your time wisely with regards to what your end goal is, for instance, say you're studying medicine, you know you need to finish by the end of the year. If every time when I say, Bessie, hey, listen, let's do A, B, C, D, you can't set a boundary on that time. At the end of the day, it takes away from your own success and what you need to do. And I think it's important for people around you to understand your time boundaries, because if I'm really about you and for you and the things that need to happen in your life, it's important that I respect those boundaries. And I think part of a self-boundary or level of self-awareness as well comes with learning to not be guilty about what you need to do for yourself first. Because then now if you say no, but you spend so much energy guilty and aware of what you can't do, you know what I'm saying? Like, if your no for you isn't a good boundary that says it's important, right? Then I think that's also it's eating away from the very structure that you're supposed to set up for yourself to protect yourself, which is what boundaries are there for.
But I think boundaries are to protect you and
the people, because then you're going to be bitter.
Yeah.
Everyone is coming here to my storehouse, they're pulling out.
You're gonna be a victim of like, oh, everyone does this to me. No, boundaries protect them as well from your the repercussion of what happens when you are not setting boundaries. Another boundary that I think we have said is family. You know, the things that people can say about your family or people that you care about. Whoever you deeply care about. Having people in a space kind of feeling like they have the freedom to just like lash out on your mom or on a family member or on a friend or, on a circumstance, almost like just testing to see like what you're going to do or say, is it okay or whatever. This is a clear boundary. Like, I think every boundary is almost underpinned with respect. The only way that someone will observe your boundaries is if they respect you. If they don't respect you, your boundaries just want something that you've set up and they're just like, okay, well, I don't have to listen to that. I can call you what I want to call you. I can belittle you in a room. If they don't respect you fundamentally, your boundaries are literally just for you.
And I think your boundaries have to become increasingly clear to you for you to be able to communicate them to other people. And for other people to start to understand your boundaries so that they can work within the ambit of those boundaries. Otherwise, people will constantly cross your boundaries. You'll constantly feel like, oh, people are crossing my boundaries. But because you don't understand your boundaries, you just keep being offended when it does happen, right? And you haven't communicated them, so you haven't given them the opportunity to make right or do right.
Boundaries with yourself?
Boundaries with myself.
Do you think you bind yourself to not respect other people's boundaries?
Say that again.
So it is my personal boundary that I would not act in a way that traverses somebody else's boundary.
That is a personal boundary.
Like almost like you set up a boundary in your own life to say, if Sifia says this is her time and that's her boundary, I'm bound by the fact that I respect that boundary.
And I want somebody else to respect my boundaries. Therefore, I reap what I sow.
I actually think if you're not self-aware and if you're not spending enough time maybe thinking about the ways that you can attain to success, you won't form boundaries in your life. There's people who have boundaryless lives where anytime is tea time, let's do it. I can say anything, everything's, people can say something really inappropriate and you just giggle it off. And like those kinds of spaces, I feel that's a very toxic place, eh? And I think you can slip into it if you're not aware of your values. If you're not clear on, I don't like this and I don't like that and this is inappropriate and this is not okay. Like my sister Usivu, you will say something, like we can be laughing, having a great time, then you say something and she'll correct it like immediately there. But because I know that that's how she is and that her boundaries are clear, like you kind of fall back. You realize, not in a mean way, but in a you teach people how to treat you kind of way. Like you actually, you just learn in that way about, next time, I actually think.
Don't you think that's why you get so offended when somebody makes a false assumption of you? Like where you set a boundary of, I would never maybe do A, B, C, D, and somebody presupposes that that's what you're doing. You're like, I'd never do that because I respect myself, right? And I respect you too. And the fact that you think that that's what I was trying to do, I think that's why it becomes so offensive because you understand, but that's not who I am. Like that's not what I would do.
I like the example you made of Sibu because I think there's a part of it is if you're the type of person who addresses someone stepping over your boundary in the moment, I think there's a level of freedom because you're being true. I think it's also truthfulness. So in that moment to be like, no, that wasn't okay, and it landed in this way, and that's a boundary. You don't go back to your room and fester about it, and it's not something that a week later when I see him Bessie, there's just something here. I'm not sure why I'm struggling. I'm not sure why I can't look at you. I'm not sure why I can't talk to you. Why I'm anxious. And chances are the reason I am is because last week you said something and it was a boundary. And I think our emotions point us to our boundaries. I know we often say don't trust your emotions because your emotions can lie to you. But I think there's also truth in your most instant response to something. And perhaps it's also a reflection of, is that just a sore point that I have? That's an internal battle thing. But in a lot of times I think it's just a boundary. And I like the point you raised earlier about like people saying stuff about people close to you. I think another boundary for me is especially where I've told you in confidence and then you're using it as a data point in a discussion about someone close to me. Then I struggle because I'm like, man, it's true, but I'm also like, it's not the space for you to choose to use someone I care about as an example. I struggle with that's also a boundary.
That's so
but
telling
I think
of the person.
Yeah, I think it's respect, man.
I find it so interesting. I think maybe sometimes it also depends on the nature of the relationship. My sister and her friends, they all know each other's families. They cross boundaries with each other all the time. It's ridiculous. But it's also interesting in the sense that for them, in their space, it makes them really close. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like someone will be saying, yaka. And that's just like the way that they are. But for all of them, it's like a group of like 8 of them. That's their nature of their relationship. They're extremely honest. There's no time and place, etc. But I think that they've learned to work within that space. And I think maybe sometimes you know the different people in your life and what a boundary looks like. And I think it's more about understanding and learning the nature of a relationship and how it works. People grow. As people grow, actually, they can say more stuff.
I think so. I think so. When you're 40, the chill is
0. My boyfriend says stuff about my family all the damn time. And I'm like, hold on. But most of the time he's making sense. He's like, and initially it would be like, no, stop. Like, that's not...
You can't.
And now I'm like, but they're not good enough. Or even I'll see something, I'm like, that's from Zimbabwe. That could never be something. Like, before you have to be like, your country.
But there it's earned. And you know that this person loves me and it is invested in me. So it's not just from so yes, they may jab at you for laughs sometimes, but it's from a different place when it's earned.
Okay, so when a boundary is crossed, you either deal with it, or what's the alternative is what I think is the worst. Like that having to have a nervous giggle to pass the moment, or just be like, or just like shrink, or just be quiet. That's what I have a problem with. When you are clear that you are just like that, that was uncomfortable or whatever, but then in the moment you're just like, you know, I think that's where the problem comes. Like, we actually just have to learn to speak. And I was saying to them earlier, like, I think I'm very direct, and I feel the older I'm getting, the more direct I'm becoming. Just because I actually think you do literally teach people how to manage you and how to deal with you. But like, don't shrink. I don't think you should shrink. And I think respectfully everything. And also, don't always go in with the thing that this person was being malicious. Like, correct the behavior. Don't necessarily trash the person. Just be like, actually, I don't really appreciate the way that you said this or what this is, and then don't say that you are rude and you are this. Like, don't go for the person.
Always.
You know, you are always crossing my boundaries. You are so rude. I correct the behavior, and the person will understand that it was the behavior that was wrong. They're not fighting me. You know what I mean?
So how do you know when you're successful at setting your boundaries? That was the question that we want to close with. How do you know in your life when you're like, good, my boundaries are clear, right? And I'm working within them.
It's when I'm not feeling them being crossed a lot. I feel like people have understood.
No, but boundaries with yourself. How do you know you're successful with your own boundaries? Because then that's, you can't really control what other people's behavior is, right? Like, one day somebody...
Say again? How do you know that you're successful?
In?
Keeping your own
boundaries.
To yourself.
That's assuming you have set boundaries in your life.
If you have no answer, if you don't have boundaries in your life.
So, no boundaries. I think the more clear your sense of purpose is, the more clear your self-boundaries are. Because I imagine if I'm working 9 to 5, right? That is a boundary that has been set for me. If I have nothing else for me that I think is important, that I must pursue, that I must do, then I don't set any other boundary. Anything happens from 6 right up until I sleep. I can be on social media for as long as I want.
Yeah.
I can do any, but then that is an indicator, I think, sometimes of the clarity of your sense of what needs to be done with your time and how prudently you're using it. And so I think that is probably my challenge at this point, to say, let's sit and ponder and pray actually over what actually ought I be doing with my time, what's important in my life and my purpose, etc. And what boundaries do I need to set to be able to achieve those very specific goals.
And what kinds of people do I have to enlist into my life to help me keep up those boundaries? Because it's easy to fail a boundary to yourself. When someone else is like, girl, is this you hanging out at this time when you said you wanna...
You should be writing your book, Shine.
And in reality, I just think when I've been in a space where I'm clear about my boundaries and I'm applying them, it's what you mentioned earlier, I'm more useful to those even that I care about, where I feel more present. So, and there's this person who says there's some smart person about time, but if you don't allocate your time, it will be allocated for you either way. And once you allocate it, you feel a sense of freedom. And that's what I'm learning. I've always been I just want to be spontaneous and just have good times. But with more responsibilities I'm learning, planning has given me incredible freedom. So to plan out my days and my life, and in those plans to plan out time to just be with people, and then my mind is not preoccupied by there's that thing that I know I should be doing that is important to me that I'm not doing, because that's also carved into my life. And I think you're more conscious of yourself, you're more aware of God, you're more at peace, and you're less anxious, less guilty, less afraid. And I think there's tremendous peace that comes with setting boundaries.
There's a source of freedom.
And valuing the things that you value. So beyond work, you value your friends and your family, and creating space for that. And in that time space, just giving it to that.
Can you imagine if you hadn't allocated time to write your book?
No, it was a boundary. Hey,
right?
It was hard.
There is so much that you would be missing out in your own life, but there's so much that we would be missing out of your life. There's so much of the world that would be missing out on
100%.
So it is purpose driven.
Yeah. And the truth is, it's hard. I remember that boundary. There were times where peeps are like, man, let's just go hang out. And literally saying no and going to sit at a coffee shop alone. And you're the only one who can see this elusive dream of yours, and it's hard. So boundaries aren't always easy, but they are worthwhile. But it is hard to say no to instantaneous gratification now of just laughing and enjoying ourselves versus doing the hard things.
Boundaries of health as well. Making boundaries to say, no ways, I'm not gonna eat cake 5 times a week. Like, imagine, I mean,
the look on your face when you say that, shock.
Yeah, I'm gonna set the boundary. I'm gonna cook at least 4 times. Like, I'm gonna have a healthy meal, right? Like, I'm going to drink. It is intentional. It's a choice. It's decision making.
It is,
because I value health because I've been given a body. It's not like it's and it can go wrong. It can go bad, but let me use it well.
And I think what ends up happening is that you start hedging yourself into a healthy place.
Yeah.
With health boundaries coming in, your time boundaries coming in, your family boundaries. Don't say this to me. Treat me like this. What ends up happening is that you start creating or carving out a space where you're healthy and you're good and you can
build your life.
And you can build your life.
Because it's the right foundations.
Everything, you've got a level of clarity. So I think it's a worthwhile exercise. Maybe I mean, some people are watching thinking, but I don't even know where I'd even start. Sometimes, like Sharon was saying, just the promptings of some things that you feel like, okay, I don't like that. I don't like when people say that. I don't like it when I see that kind of injustice or whatever it is.
I don't like it when I do that.
I don't like it when I do that. I don't like how it feels when I do that. But guys, this is our boundary currently. We draw the line and we say we gotta go.
Gotta go. Friends.
Gotta go.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for all of your input and your comments, guys. We've been having such a great time reading your comments and responding to your comments. Continue to watch the videos and to share the videos and to subscribe. Actually, I haven't been saying
Don't set a boundary on the subscriptions. Make your friends our friends.
But also tell us about what you're thinking about, so that we can talk about things that are important to you right now.
what healthy boundary have you set that you have found has catapulted where you are and built health into your life? And I'd love to learn from you too. That this is a teaching and learning
That's
and sharing.
important.
And how have you found is the best way to communicate when your boundary has been
Crossed.
Help.
That's the person saying.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, guys. See you in the next one.
Bye.